This is a political talk show on WRMN. That's WRMN 1410 on that AM dial that we love so much all the way since 1949. And WRMN1410.com. That is the place to go to learn about all of the different digital platforms that you can watch, listen, interact, and be a part of the show. My name is Sonar Greene, and this is a political talk show. And we strive to give you kind of outside the partisan issues and into the deep dives. And there's nothing more deep diving that I love more than to get into municipal law. Honestly, a lot of people think it's just weird, but that's okay. I've got more weird friends along with me. Not to be out-weirded, I've got my great buddy over here. That would be Mr. Jim Vasselli of Vasselli Law. That's jmvchicagolaw.com. Thank you very much for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Nice. Thanks for having me.
So, municipal wonk is what they call it in the learned circles. But we brought you on because of the news that's coming on. A lot of in the area, and I have the privilege of being able to do the 10 o'clock news every morning now. So I get to read the paper, I get to read all of the different outlets and things. And it seems like a lot of people are going one way or the other. A lot of the municipalities are either improving and saying we've got another budget for the waterfront or where we've got the thing or that. Or sadly, there are some municipalities that are struggling a little bit more. Even then, I've seen it even as far down as food pantries. You get in the same week, one food pantry is expanding into another side, and another food pantry is starting to come down. So it's back and forth on either side. So the city of Harvey right now is calling together a special meeting that's actually happening tonight. I believe it is 5:30 tonight that they're having this special meeting for. Could you tell us a little bit more about the context of this meeting?
Sure. So thank you. Thank you for having me. And obviously your interest in these topics is great, and it's a great education for the community. The city of Harvey is trying to pass an ordinance to get the protection, or in the fancy legal words we call avail themselves of the protections of the financially distressed city law. And that is in section 8-12-1 of the Illinois Municipal Code. And it's the financially distressed city law. That's the citation. And if you meet the qualifications of this, you basically turn your finances and financial planning over to the state of Illinois. So to break it down even a little bit further, the first step in this process is normally a notification to the elected officials, the constitutionals, and your state reps and senators that you're going to look into this act. It's not used very often. And then the municipality in question, in this case, the city of Harvey, and I think the city of East St. Louis has done it before, passes an ordinance. A certified copy of that ordinance goes to, I believe, the Secretary of State, the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, or the Speaker of the House's clerk, and the Governor's office. And then they have to take legislative actions to enforce these rules about the organization and internal management of the city, the permissions to make contracts, leases, to approval of loans and notes and other financial aid, and the appointment of officers, agents, and employees for their qualifications and while this crisis goes on.
So this isn't like necessarily nefarious, right? It isn't like somebody embezzled something and the state is coming in and saying, you stole all this money and this is where it went. It's more of, okay, we've kind of boxed ourselves into a budgeting crisis, whether a lot of municipalities are leaning on either that grocery tax that was statewide or the COVID relief money for a lot of things. So there's a lot of organizations that the rubber's meeting the road right now with a lot of this. Is this kind of where this is coming in, that it's not necessarily anything nefarious, it's just that the numbers just don't add up?
I think it's a great point. If I could go back and use Harvey as an example for this. So no, there's no allegations of fraud or mismanagement or embezzlement. The city failed in part, this is coming abroad, because the city failed to make pension payments. And by state law, if you don't make mandatory pension payments, then the state diverts funds, they intercept. So think about it just like a football game. They take the funds, it goes here rather than over there, real bad radio. But it goes in one direction rather than the other. And they take that money. So that personal income tax that the cities normally get, that goes not to the cities now, but to offset those delinquent pension obligations. They have tried to work, but the state's hands are bound. I mean, we are a country of law, it's not of men or women, or cities in this case. And the laws say that the money needs to be intercepted. So the money gets diverted from what would normally go to offset city obligations, and it causes a crisis for a place like Harvey, which is tomorrow also furloughing 10% of its employees.
Is this are they being affected by the national shutdown, or is this all just local budgeting at this point?
A lot of it's local budgeting. I think the national shutdown will have an effect shortly. I think as always, tremendous points. The ARPA funds. So that was great, but it also provided somewhat of an artificial lifeline. Where people thought that their budgets were in better places in the general populace when the municipal budgets were really surviving off the ARPA funds. The grocery tax, while very unpopular in some circles for voting issues, many municipalities survive on that grocery tax. And to take it off, the policy decision's been made.
Yeah.
But then you have to go and you have to convince your representative. We are a republic, not a democracy, right? You have to convince these people who are elected to pass this tax, which is an artificial and practical purposes tax, because it's already on there. What you're saying is maintain the status quo.
And when they passed it, and by removing the tax statewide, they put in that bill and now law. See, it's weird to keep talking back and forth with it. But now in that law, they put it in that it only took the governing body to actually put that in there, not actually having to pass a full referendum.
That's
for
correct.
Everything. And
it's important because referendums for taxes oftentimes fail.
We saw one just fail in this last one.
Absolutely. And I would like to, and at some point in time, my partner Aaron or I will assign one of our associates or something to research the number of referendums that pass or fail, because my guess is most of those that involve financing fail.
Oh, yeah. Especially for new taxes, because that's what this would have ended up being even for that side. So now they were able to put the new grocery tax on with just a decision. But is that anything that Harvey was able to use? Because it was only, I think, less than 60% of the municipalities in the area decided to put that grocery tax in there.
And I don't know if they passed it or not. I know that the tax itself doesn't roll off up until the first. So from a liquidity standpoint, I don't know if that would be necessarily applicable. It's a great point, and I'll look into whether they passed it or not. Most municipalities have passed it by the October date, because for IDOR, which is, shouldn't use acronyms, but the Illinois Department of Revenue, they needed that with a little lead time to be able to implement the proper way, because they collect, take a processing fee, and then remit. The ironic part about the grocery and these, the distributive fund taxes is those all stem from local units of government imposing a tax. The state then came in and took that power away, and they started doing it. And now they would slice off more and more, and kind of like negotiating. I always say, like, you negotiate the way you cut a slice of salami, like one little slice at a time, and they don't control it. They took the dominion away from the localities that actually started off on this, and then they kind of exercised their dominion for their own budgetary needs rather than the localities who actually thought of this idea. I don't purport to be a legislator. I just know that my governments need as much resources to be able to make sure potholes are filled, police officers hit the streets, and firefighters can rescue little kids as they need.
Absolutely. We don't want to hold back any dollars for that.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the designation for this too, because obviously there's a lot of different cities that are in need, but not to the point where the state has to come in and actually direct. So some of the things that of just poking around a little bit comes in for what's called the home rule requirement for this too. So could you explain a little bit for what that is, if anybody starts looking into this?
Sure. So there's two types of municipalities in the state of Illinois. There are home rule and non-home rule. And this all stems back from a case at the turn of the last century from a Judge Dillon in Iowa. And and they have a Dillon's rule. Dillon's rule says that municipalities only have those power that the state legislature gives them. Okay. Think of them as like lower level entities, okay? And then home rule are their own standalone entities. They can generate powers themselves. They can do everything that the state doesn't preclude them from doing.
So it's almost like a trickle down of, or I guess a cookie cutter of rights, right? Even when we talk about the federal government. The federal government only has those powers directed to the federal government, nothing more, nothing less, by the 4th Article and the 10th Amendment. That's what everything else is states' rights. So then anything the state doesn't directly have direct law for, even in the state's constitution, then it falls down to the municipalities. Is that where the home rule kind of fits in with this?
You gave me the perfect segue. So let's put that paradigm up. Mm-hmm. The smaller level non-home rule units, which are generally under 25,000, or they pass a referendum for home rule. Theoretically, you get a court order, but let's not talk about that. It's too wonky. The state has these powers, and one of the powers is to give powers to the municipalities. They do that through constitution. They do that through legislation, through statute. I guess they would do it by court order and then by implication. If you have the right to have police cars, you have the right to get their oil changed as well, right? So there's a certain level of implication goes on there. But there are certain matters that you cannot do as a non-home rule unit. You have to get different authority to do so. A home rule unit, in that regard, can operate in a manner independent. They can do whatever they want unless it's been deemed outside the municipal purview from either statute or court case. Like a home rule unit cannot participate in a tax sale auction. It's too speculative. They say that's not for a public purpose. So it's really super wonky. I love it. I think it's great. There's hundreds of cases.
Okay. And so essentially what this is happening is Harvey is in trouble budget-wise for whatever it is. There's going to be an investigation, as there always is when somebody comes in for oversight. So then they're going to do this oversight, and by they, it's the state that's coming in with this. So it's not necessarily the county or anything else that's smaller than that. This is the full-on state control that's coming into to oversee this side. Now, I don't think they're necessarily going to replace everybody, put different bodies into the same position, but they are going to direct the people that are over there now.
There will be, there will be powers that are given to the state that would normally not be given. And it is a cession of power. There is some level of, I'm going to break this down. They're throwing their hands in the air and say, we can't handle this thing. Come and help us. Come and work through this.
Is this the equivalency of, I don't know, I guess effectively a bankruptcy? I guess would be the only way to not throw bankruptcy as a pejorative out there, but just a, hey, I need help.
Yeah. So that's a great way to put it. I was with my lovely wife last night, and she was talking to me about this. Trust me, we have more interesting conversations than this. But, she said, we were talking about it, and she's way smarter than I am, but she's not a lawyer. And I said, I want you to think about this as if it were bankruptcy. This is a stopgap that the law provides to allow for a financial pivot.
Gotcha.
When people talk about bankruptcy and they talk about it in these pejorative terms, but it's not. It's a restart. I mean, of course, there's always going to be extreme examples, and we should never look to the outside of the bell-shaped curve, but look on the inside of the bell-shaped curve, the big mass, right? And that being the case, this like that is not necessarily a bad thing in so much that they were responsible enough and had enough accountability to say we need help.
Which is fantastic.
Fantastic. We should do that as human beings, much less have the responsibility of a corporate authorities to go forward like that.
I mean, is it bad that this is a municipality that cannot afford and cannot pay its bills? And, you know, at the end of the day, it's not even the people who's in charge right now's fault at that, right? It's we turn over so much, which is why it's always has to be about the policy, and it always has to be about the platform, and it always has to be about the plan. It cannot be about the person. And I'm not saying this is what happened, but this is how you end up backing yourself into a corner, is when you vote for the person, not for the plan. Because the plan I can hand over. I can say, hey, Jimmy, I had it. You got it. Here's the plan. Here's the history of what we did. I'll see you later. Let's go. So what they've done is they've decided that they need help with the plan. So what does that look like? Obviously, it's state resources that are coming in, whether it's personnel or dollars and cents that are coming in for that. But what does it look like as the repair? Because obviously the state can't control a municipality like this forever, in perpetuity, where it's just like, yeah, elect your own people, but we're still going to run your budget for you. I don't think I necessarily want to live in a world like that.
So there's a plan, a 45-day window that comes in under Section 15 of the Act,
okay,
the specific Act, where they have to provide their financial plan and, you know, work through and take into account numerous fiscal years to ensure that there's solvency. Like, just like in a bankruptcy matter, we don't just freeze and stop. I mean, one of the great things that the founders did was eliminating debtor's prison, because it's a self-perpetuating thing.
Thank
right?
God, I've been there too.
Right. And we've all looked at it and been like, okay, is this is the one that's going to bounce? And you look at this, and it is, you'd be done forever, right? Because you're stuck in debtor's prison, and that's just a power control thing. And we could have a much longer conversation about the basis for that. But
what is it? Law is threats, I think is what it was. We'll go at a whole different side than that.
But no, there is an idea that this is a pivot. We're going to make these changes, and then we're going to go and do things in a different manner. Again, I would have liked to have the time, and if we talk about this again, to see what's happened when this act's been invoked previously, because it's not something you see every day. Thank God, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there is an infrastructure that needs to be put in place. And like you said, and I think of one of the great guitar solos of all time, but the band Living Color and the song Cult of Personality, when you vote for a person, for an image, for a likeness, you come into problems because you have past precedent that needs to be handled. You can vote for a qualified candidate. I hope people do. But you have to vote for their policies. And the fact of the matter is the policies show the qualifications.
Oh, they always do. You will know them by their fruits, right? That's how it always works. So there is a special city council meeting tonight at 5:30. It will be held at 1461. That is a lot of numbers. Yeah. Okay. It'll be held at 14618 Lincoln Avenue. City officials announced in this public notice, the meeting called by Mayor Christopher J. Clark will center on the presentation of the city's financial condition. Before I let you go, talking about branding and cult of personality, let's talk about Representative Cam Buckner and this new, what do they call it? Stadium Transparency and Responsible Spending Act.
I think it's an acronym.
It is. For STARS is what it is. Right. The bill uses generic framing, doesn't single out a particular team. obviously, it is about the Chicago Bears. It talks about 30-day agreements, agreements between state and local governments for sports franchises must be publicly posted online for a minimum of 30 days. We've also got independent cost-benefit analysis that the team has to pay for as well. Public hearings on stake and stakeholder input. At least 2 public hearings are held by the affected community, and reimbursement if they decide to leave, and reimbursement for property tax revenue. So if property tax revenue is taken away and libraries and police and fire don't have enough, they're coming for them. Is this a targeted bill? First off, let's ask just a broader question. Sure. Can I write targeted bills?
So special legislation is impermissible in the state of Illinois. And that means something that affects only one thing and not as a statewide concern.
So what if I say it only affects sport teams named after animals with only 4 letters in them?
What if we had sports teams that are sponsored by WRMN or a broadcast studio? I agree. It is, oddly enough, the 2 that are both work with the state. But no, it is. Also, if you read the state statutes, which you do, and I'm sure everybody listening does, you'll see that there are a plethora of laws that affect only certain municipalities or certain things. And so special legislation is when the court decides it is. And this is obviously targeted for the Chicago Bears and to see them remain in the city of Chicago. It's we could do a 12-episode radio show about the contract and about the negotiations and about the fact that Bears deal, I think that they are the only franchise that doesn't get their parking revenue.
Wow.
And that goes to the Park District, I believe. It was an overnight deal done, and it was poorly negotiated in so much that, without getting into big pictures, I was not there with Jane Byrne. I was not there with George Hallis. I would have loved to have been, but I was not. But when you make one side of a deal that's so arduous for the other side to go through, we talked about debtor's prison before. It's the same type of thing. Contracts should be fair on both sides.
Yeah. Because
then somebody's just going to try to get out of it, and you really inducing them, fancy legal word of the day, to breach the contract and break away. Clearly this is regarding the Bears.
From what I read, the city is saying that the Bears themselves owe the city $500 million for the renovations for everything. Sure. And then the Bears are saying, well, hold on a second. We gave you about, I think the number, I read it this morning, I think it was $230 million to the Parks District for that same thing you were talking about. And they said it wasn't even our debt. It was a whole nother company that was even putting that together. So do they have to clear that up before they could even think about moving anywhere else?
So that is an interesting question. I will tell you, I don't know. And I will look into that. And
can I force you, if I can't put you in debt, I can't force you to go in jail, but can I force you where you are to stay where you are?
Right. So the Los Angeles Rams, remember, they were in St. Louis right before they moved to Los Angeles. And the city of St. Louis or the township or whatever entities it is, or the state paid for their new stadium or subsidized a large part of their stadium. And they left. And those bonds were still outstanding. So and there's usually a pittance that gets paid, pennies on the dollar. And I don't know. I'm really interested to find out what the breakout clause was. Because when I was looking at it before, I knew that the numbers were not, for the number, we're talking about billions. I mean, like when there's labor negotiations with franchise owners and sports professional athletes, it's millionaires versus billionaires, right? We're talking about billions and millions of dollars. And I don't know. I want to see how that shakes out because I thought it wasn't that arduous. And honestly, kudos to Buckner. I mean, in so much that he is there and he's an advocate for his district.
Yep.
And whether you believe that they should be in Arlington Heights or Chicago, and it's always, everybody likes to look at the lakefront, but Buckner's looking out for his district. That's what his job is do. That's what the people put him in place to do.
He says he frames the bill as a guardrail against blank checks to wealthy teams whose economic return is uncertain. I mean, he's hedging his bet on that side. Yeah. And speaking of bets, I think I would put the over-under on opening season at, let's say, 2037. Where do you put the
Yeah, it's going to be, I think Arlington Heights is a foregone conclusion. I think that this gets negotiated away. But I thought it was like 2 years to leave and then 8 years to build.
Wow.
Or something like that. I know it's
2040 over or under. Which one are you looking at?
I would go under. I'll go under. I am not he who gambles lives in shambles, but I will go under. I do think that they're going to move fast because I think that the economics for a Final Four, a Super Bowl, conventions and whatnot will just be too great. And I think that here we go. I think that they'll sell the team, right? They'll package it and they'll sell it.
There it is. Well, thank you very much for being here, Mr. Vasselli. That is Jim Vasselli from JMV Vasselli Law. JMVChicagoLaw.com is the best place to go to learn about more. Anything interesting you're working on other than incredibly wonky deep dives into these municipalities here?
No, just representing the local governments in the area, including the Village of Hampshire, the Village of Burlington, Lily Lake, Sugar Grove, Elgin Township, Mental Health Commission. It's great elected people, and I think the Valley should know that they've really put some really good people in office.
But even if I had little stuff, I can still come over to you too. Wills or trusts or anything like that?
I love real estate. We got a really good wills guy, way smarter than me. We do civil litigation. We represented somebody on a speeding ticket not too long ago. We do everything from $100 million deals to selling $3,000 vacant lots.
Well, I appreciate you being on as always. That is JMVChicagoLaw.com. This is the best place to go. And you can find this recording here on the podcast for A Political Talk Show over at JMVChicagoLaw.com. It'll also be over there. Stick around for more WRMN and more A Political Talk Show coming up after this.